So thank you very much for this invitation and for all these speeches. As time is counted, I'm not going to come back to the context or analysis, but rather try to focus on drawing the headlines of what might be an alternative project. This is usually a 1-hour conference, so please forgive me if it's a little bit short on some of the ideas. This alternative project I'm going to talk about, we call it ecosocialism. I know some of you and other ones also have different words for it. But the essential thing is that I think we definitely need now to tell a story, another story. Of course, not a fairy tale, but a story that can become true, and to convince our people that this is also feasible, that it's possible, in order to fight what Michael Hudson talked about, this Margaret Thatcher's there is no alternative. I think we need an anti-TINA project. So the basic point leading our reflection on ecosocialism is first that we act, that socialism in this traditional acceptation has reached its limits on 2 major points. First one being the individual emancipation of human beings, and the second one being not having taken into account the physical, natural resources limits and the new climate challenge. On the other side, the ecological political family has also failed to reach system analysis and to link environmental issues with the critics of the economic system and capitalism most of the time. So we have tried to combine the best out of these 2 major political trends, being socialism and political ecology, in order to go back to the roots of the crisis and not being only, you know, accompanying the changes, but being radical in the sense of going to the roots of this crisis. And our statement is that this capitalism has basically the same logics that applies both to workers and to the environment, being to take the most both of human forces and natural resources in order to maximize profit in a very short term. This results, of course, you know it in the fact that we are getting shorter and shorter on fossil energy, gas, oil, but also on water, soils, and even now oxygen. And of course, we need to change that in order to preserve the human being conditions of living on Earth. So to drive this change, we think that we need to act on both consumption and production means and procedures, meaning that we need to basically to reconnect the finance and economical world with human social needs and demands, taking into account the natural limits of all these resources. We also have a statement in this ecosocialism project that this cannot be driven by multinationals, transnationals, and private sector, because we think we need public ownership and citizen control on these common goods so that the long-term interest can be saved from short-term capitalist interests. One of the major assumptions, I was telling that in my introduction, but just to insist on that, is that of course we need, as left forces, to keep on protesting, to keep on saying no to this system. We need to keep on resisting, as Syriza government, Greek government makes it here. But we also need to open the roads to alternatives and to alternative projects. We have been very much inspired by what is also done in South America, and maybe that could be a good idea for next conference, to have people from South America to talk also about the buen vivir. For instance, some very interesting works have been done in Ecuador, but also in other countries. And this is a very important side of that project, because this is what can have popular mobilization for this project. Because if we just keep on telling people how bad the situation is, without giving a view that, of how life could become better, I think it will be very difficult to get a larger audience, and that's definitely, I think, what we need to achieve now. So we have launched with the Parti de Gauche in France this work about a manifesto about ecosocialism. This has been translated into 12 different languages, and you can get it on the internet, free, on free download. I have presented it in over 10 different European countries, as well as Ecuador and Japan. And we are trying to build an eco-socialist network in Europe, but also worldwide, and to join forces, because we also think that internationalism is fundamental to reach our goals. So that's the reason why we also work, of course, with the European left in Europe, but also with different networks in Quebec or in Mexico, and also with the Mediterranean countries. Very important, of course, is also to prove that this very beautiful project is not just an utopia and not just an ideal, but that we can definitely achieve it. So we have been working on a financing budget for this. So every year we do what we call a counter budget, meaning when French government presents its budget for France, we present our own budget for France based on this eco-socialist project, to prove that the problem is not that there would not be any money. The problem is that this money exists, but is not in the right pockets. So based on a very ambitious tax revolution, and based also, for instance, on a maximum wage rule, we have proved that during the first year of an eco-socialist government in France, we would be able to get additional state resources for an amount of 130 million euros. So, of course, this would enable us to invest in different measures, what we call ecological planning. This is, of course, about energy transition, energy savings, and investing in renewable energies, but also about public transport, about local agriculture development, and also about launching a new industrial model. And about this industrial model, I must precise, because this is also in relationship with the previous speeches, that this cannot be achieved if you don't have a strong protectionist model, even at the national level, to protect your industry and to protect this new industrial model. So we also pledge for taxes on long distance and antisocial productions. This, of course, also, as you know, implies disobeying to Europe treaties and free trade agreements as they are being negotiated. So this is, of course, part of this project and of our transition program. I will give you just one example, to be brief, of what we call an ecosocialist, or both social and environmental measure, very concretely. For instance, this is having free first water liters for every individual. Meaning that the first liters of water that are necessary to human life would be free. And this would be financed by having the additional liters much more expensive, meaning that the more you consume water, the more expensive the liter is. Of course, because for us, it can't be the same price for the water used on golf, for instance, and the one used to cook for a family, for instance. So this is a very concrete social emergency measure that can also help saving water as a common good, and I can tell you that it really talks to people, even those not very much engaged in politics. And so I think that's the kind of measure we should get to be more popular, to have our project to get more popular too. I have just 5 minutes left, so briefly, just to tell you also that all this project, transition measures, financing, also leads to creating jobs. In the UK and in France, it has been estimated at 1 million, they say climate jobs, or well, it's not just only climate, 1 million sustainable jobs. There are different calculations about that, not from our left parties, but also from national statistics organizations, proving that just for the energetical transition, that would create over 600,000 jobs in 15 years in France, for instance, and this has been approved by all the statistics. So I think this is also a very strong argument that we must put to convince that this alternative project is feasible. Last thing is that I think that the major benefit of this ecosocialism project is to reconcile both workers, trade unions, but also environmental associations, for instance. For a very long period of time, ecology and industry have been enemies. I think we won't succeed in anything if we keep on this path. I think we have to convince both workers and environmental associations that they have a common interest to preserve biosphere and to preserve working conditions. And this manifesto I talked to you about has been written with both trade unionists and environmental activists, meaning that everybody can find his own political words and identity. And I think this is really very, very important in that time where we need to get united and join forces to, well, to get the power. Thank you.